Chapter 1. The Scarlet Threshold. The iron gates of House Eryndor stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. Elara pressed one trembling hand against the stone wall beside the entrance, her vision swimming. She shouldn't have come. The rumors alone should have turned her back, whispers of blood courts and immortal cruelty, of humans who entered these halls and never returned the same. But desperation had a way of making even the damned seem merciful. 3 days ago, her sister had vanished. 3 days ago, the constable had shrugged and called it another runaway. 3 days ago, Elara's mother had collapsed in grief, and the apothecary had demanded payment Elara didn't have for the medicine that might save her. So here she stood, at the threshold of the Vampire King's estate. Because the reward notice had been specific, information leading to the recovery of stolen house artifacts will be compensated generously. Inquire within. Elara had no information. She had only need. The courtyard beyond the gate stretched empty and elegant, paved in slate that gleamed like still water under the rising moon. Torches burned in iron sconces along the walls, their flames oddly colorless, casting light without warmth. The manor itself loomed 3 stories high, built from dark stone that seemed to drink the firelight rather than reflect it. Narrow windows stared down at her like eyes. She forced herself to walk forward. Each step echoed too loudly. The air tasted of autumn and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet that made her stomach turn. She'd heard the vampires of House Eryndor fed only on the willing, that they bound themselves by ancient laws of consent and contract. She'd heard they were civilized. She'd also heard they were monsters who wore civilization like a mask. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman stood in the doorway, pale as marble and perfectly still. Her gown was midnight blue velvet, cut in a style 50 years out of fashion, and her eyes were the color of old amber. She didn't blink. "The house is not receiving petitioners tonight," the woman said, her voice soft and final. "Please," Elara's voice cracked. "I only need a moment. I am looking for work, or information, or we do not employ humans. My sister is missing." The words tumbled out before Elara could stop them. "Her name is Celine. She's 16. She has dark hair and a birthmark on her left shoulder shaped like a crescent moon. She was last seen near the old market 3 nights ago, and I thought if your house has records, or if anyone has seen." The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Pity perhaps, or recognition. I cannot help you," she said, but she didn't close the door. Elara swayed. The edges of her vision darkened, and she realized with distant alarm that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Pride had kept her from begging. Pride and the knowledge that there was nothing left to beg with. The room tilted. "Wait," someone said from inside the manor. A man's voice, low and sharp as a blade drawn in the dark. The woman in blue stepped aside, and Elara saw him. He stood at the far end of the entrance hall, half shadowed by the staircase that curved upward behind him. Tall, lean, dressed in black that made him look like a piece of the darkness itself had taken human shape. His hair was dark and tied back severely, revealing a face too beautiful to be kind, all sharp angles and cold perfection. But it was his eyes that froze her in place. Silver, pure silver, bright as coins and just as cold. "Vampire, let her in," he said. The woman in blue hesitated. "My lord, she is. I can see what she is." He moved forward with fluid grace, each step soundless on the marble floor. "She's starving. She's desperate. And she's about to faint on our doorstep, which would be inconvenient." Elara wanted to argue, wanted to lift her chin and prove she was stronger than she looked. But the world was already fading at the edges, her knees buckling, and the last thing she felt was the shock of cold hands catching her before she hit the ground. She woke in a chair, not a dungeon, not a cage. A chair upholstered in dark green velvet, positioned near a fireplace where flames crackled with ordinary warmth. The room around her was a study, shelves lined with leather-bound books, a desk strewn with maps and parchment, and windows covered with heavy curtains that blocked out the night, or perhaps blocked out the dawn. Elara's head throbbed. She touched her temple and found her fingers came away clean. No blood, no wound. "You hit your head when you fell," the Vampire King said from across the room. "I caught you before it became serious, but you've been unconscious for nearly an hour." He stood by the window now, one hand resting on the curtain, as though he might draw it back. He didn't. His silver eyes watched her with an intensity that made her feel like a book he was reading. "Why am I not dead?" Elara asked. An interesting first question. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. Most humans ask where they are, or beg for release. I know where I am. And if you meant to kill me, I'd already be dead. Logical. He tilted his head. You fainted from hunger and exhaustion. I have no interest in killing the desperate. It lacks sport. The casual cruelty of the words should have frightened her. Instead, she felt a strange spark of anger. I didn't come here for sport, she said. I came because my sister is missing and no one else will help me find her. And you thought a vampire would? I thought a vampire might have information. Silence stretched between them. The fire popped and hissed. Your sister's name is Celine, he said finally. 16 years old, dark hair, crescent birthmark. Elara's heart stopped. You know her. I know of her. He turned from the window, and for the first time, she saw his face fully in the firelight. Beautiful and terrible and ancient. 3 nights ago, a girl matching that description was seen near the docks in the company of a vampire from House Revel. House Revel? Our enemies. His voice went flat. If your sister went with them willingly, she's likely being held as leverage. If she went unwillingly, he paused. The law forbids taking humans by force. But House Revel has never cared much for law. Elara stood, ignoring the way her legs shook. Then help me get her back. Why would I do that? Because you're a king. Because you have power. Because she stopped, searching his cold, perfect face for something human. Because it's the right thing to do. He laughed. It was a quiet sound, bitter as winter wind. I am not in the business of doing right things, miss. Elara Thorne, Miss Thorne. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the inhuman stillness of him, the way he didn't breathe except when he spoke. I am in the business of maintaining power. And retrieving one human girl from House Revel would cost me alliances, resources, and possibly lives. What could you possibly offer in return? She had nothing. No money, no influence, no skills that would matter to an immortal king. But she lifted her chin anyway. Myself, she said. I'll work for you. I'll pay whatever debt you name. Just help me find my sister. His silver eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he studied her face as though searching for a lie. Then he smiled. It was not a kind smile. Very well, Miss Thorne. I accept your offer. You will remain here as my guest and my debtor until your sister is found. And in return, he moved past her toward the door. You will help me find what House Revel stole from me. Because your sister, I suspect, is not the only thing they've taken. He opened the door, and the woman in blue appeared as though summoned. Show Miss Thorne to the east wing, he commanded. Feed her. Then bring her to the war room. We have work to do, as the woman led Elara into the dark corridors of House Eryndor. She glanced back once. The vampire king stood in the doorway of the study, silhouetted by firelight, watching her with eyes like winter stars, and Elara realized she had just made a bargain with something far more dangerous than she'd imagined. Chapter 2. The rules of night. The east wing smelled of old roses and candle wax. Elara followed the woman in blue who had introduced herself only as Marguerite. The seneschal through corridors lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow their movement. The paintings depicted pale figures in outdated finery, their expressions serene and their gazes unsettling. Some had silver eyes. Others had eyes like garnets or sapphires, glinting with colors no human iris could hold. The previous lords and ladies of House Eryndor, Marguerite said, without being asked. Some ruled for centuries. Others barely survived a decade. Immortality does not guarantee wisdom. Elara's footsteps echoed on the marble floor. How long has he ruled? Lord Kael? Marguerite's voice softened almost imperceptibly. 237 years. He was 28 when he was turned. He has outlasted 7 rival houses and 3 attempted coups. He is not a kind master, Miss Thorne, but he is a just one. Remember that. They stopped before a heavy wooden door carved with intricate patterns, thorns and roses intertwined so tightly it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Your room, Marguerite said, pushing the door open. You will find clothing in the wardrobe, and water for washing. Food will be brought shortly. You are not a prisoner, but you are also not free to leave the estate without Lord Kael's permission. The wards on the gates will not allow you to pass. Elara stepped inside. The room was larger than her entire apartment in the city, a 4-poster bed draped in deep burgundy, a writing desk by the window, bookshelves filled with leather spines, and a fireplace already lit and crackling. It was beautiful. It was a cage made of velvet. Why is he helping me? Elara asked before Marguerite could leave. He said my sister isn't the only thing House Revel stole. What did they take from him? Marguerite's amber eyes met hers. For a moment, the seneschal's composed mask slipped, revealing something ancient and sad. A relic, she said quietly. An artifact bound by blood and oath, older than this house itself. Without it, Lord Kael's claim to leadership is vulnerable. House Revel knows this. They are circling like wolves, waiting for him to weaken. She paused. Your sister may be leverage, or she may be bait. Either way, finding her serves his purpose as much as yours, so I'm useful to him, for now. Marguerite's expression hardened again. Do not mistake convenience for care, Miss Thorne. Vampires do not love as humans do. We are capable of loyalty, of honor, even affection. But we are also capable of terrible patience. Lord Kael has waited centuries for many things. Do not assume you are more than a passing moment in his long existence. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Elara alone. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. What had she done? She'd bargained herself to a creature who saw her as a tool, a temporary inconvenience in an immortal game. She didn't understand. But Celine was out there somewhere frightened, maybe hurt, definitely in danger, and Elara would walk into hell itself if it meant bringing her sister home, even if hell wore a beautiful face and called itself a king. An hour later, fed and dressed in borrowed clothes, a simple gray gown that fit surprisingly well, Elara was escorted to the war room. It was not what she expected. She had imagined something grand and imposing, a throne room with banners and menace. Instead, she found herself in a circular chamber lit by dozens of candles, their flames reflected in the polished surface of a massive oak table. Maps covered the table's surface, marked with symbols and notations in languages she didn't recognize. Lord Kael stood at the far end, his coat discarded, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. As he studied a particular section of the map, he looked up as she entered. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? Most humans lose their nerve once they realize what they've agreed to. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. We have much to discuss and little time. Elara sat, her spine straight. Where's my sister? I don't know yet, but I know where she was taken. He pointed to a mark on the map, a district near the river, old warehouses and abandoned factories. House Revel has a secondary stronghold here, unofficial, hidden from the Night Council's oversight. If they're holding hostages or storing stolen artifacts, it would be there. Then we go tonight. We do not. His voice was sharp. House Revel is expecting retaliation. The building will be guarded, warded, and likely trapped. Walking in unprepared would be suicide for you, certainly. For me, merely inconvenient. Then what do we do? Kael moved around the table, his steps silent despite his size. He stopped beside her chair, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. We gather information, he said. House Revel has spies in the city. So do I. I've already sent word to my contacts. By dawn, we'll know how many vampires guard the warehouse, what wards protect it, and whether your sister is truly there. And if she is, then we plan an extraction. He leaned against the table, his silver eyes fixed on her face. But understand this, Miss Thorne. I am not rescuing your sister out of altruism. I am using her disappearance as an excuse to strike at House Revel and recover what is mine. If it comes to a choice between retrieving my relic and saving her life, I will choose the relic. Elara's hands clenched in her lap. You're a monster, yes, he said it simply, without shame or apology. I am 265 years old. I have killed humans, vampires, and things that were neither. I have watched kingdoms rise and fall. I have loved and lost and learned that sentiment is a luxury immortals cannot afford. I am telling you this now so you have no illusions about what I am. Then why tell me at all? Her voice shook with anger. Why not just lie? Why not let me believe you're helping out of kindness? Something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps, or something like respect. Because you deserve honesty, he said quietly. You came here desperate and brave and foolish enough to bargain with a vampire king. The least I can offer is the truth, he straightened. I will help you find your sister, Elara Thorne. But when this is over, you will owe me a debt, and I will collect. She met his silver gaze without flinching. What kind of debt? That depends on what you're worth. He smiled, cold and sharp. We'll find out together. Before she could respond, Marguerite appeared in the doorway, her face pale even for a vampire. My lord, she said urgently, the scouts have returned. House Revel is moving tonight. They're transporting something or someone to their southern estate within the hour. Kael's expression went deadly. How many guards? 4 vampires. 2 wagons. 1 is warded. Then we have no time to plan. He looked at Elara. Can you ride a horse? Yes. But then you're coming with me. He moved toward the door, gesturing for Marguerite to follow. Prepare the horses and wake Dorian. Tell him to arm himself. We leave in 10 minutes. My lord, Marguerite protested. Taking the human is too dangerous. She has a vested interest in success. And if her sister is in that wagon, Elara will be able to identify her faster than any of us. He glanced back at Elara. Unless you'd prefer to wait here while I decide whether to save your sister or abandon her. Elara stood, her heart hammering. I'm coming. Good. Kael's smile was all teeth. Try not to die. It would be inconvenient. As they rushed through the corridors toward the stables, Elara realized that somewhere in the past 2 hours, her quiet, wounded life had shattered completely. She was no longer a seamstress grieving her sister. She was a debtor bound to a vampire king, riding into the night to face an enemy she didn't understand, and she had never felt more alive. Chapter 3. The scent of blood. The horses thundered through the night like shadows given form. Elara clung to the reins of her mount, a gray mare with intelligent eyes, as they raced through empty streets toward the river district. Beside her rode Lord Kael on a black stallion that seemed as unnatural as its master, its hooves barely making sound on the cobblestones. Behind them came Dorian, a vampire with copper hair and eyes like dark honey, who had greeted Elara with a single assessing look before declaring, "She'll slow us down, then ride faster." Kael had replied, and they'd left House Eryndor at a speed that stole Elara's breath. Now the city fell away behind them, replaced by warehouses and abandoned factories that loomed like sleeping giants. The smell of the river filled the air, mud and decay and something chemical that made Elara's eyes water. Kael raised his hand, and they slowed to a trot, then stopped completely in the shadow of a crumbling brick building. The warehouse is to streets north, Kael said quietly, dismounting with fluid grace. Dorian, circle around to the eastern entrance. If they try to flee, drive them back toward me. Dorian nodded and vanished into the darkness with inhuman speed. Kael turned to Elara. You will stay behind me. You will not speak unless I tell you to, and if I tell you to run, you will run and not look back. Understood? What if your sister is in that wagon? I will get her out. His silver eyes caught the moonlight. But I cannot protect you and fight at the same time. Do not make me choose. Elara nodded, her throat tight. They moved through the shadows like ghosts. Kael's steps made no sound, and Elara did her best to match his silence, grateful for the soft leather boots Marguerite had provided. The warehouse ahead was dark except for 2 lit torches flanking a wide loading door. 2 figures stood guard, vampires, Elara knew instinctively. They had the same unnatural stillness, the same predatory awareness. Kael stopped at the corner of a building, his hand raised in warning. Elara froze behind him. 4 guards total, he murmured, his voice barely audible. 2 at the door, 2 on the roof. The wagons should be inside. He glanced at her. Stay close. Watch everything. And remember, vampires can hear your heartbeat from 50 feet away. They already know we're here. Before Elara could respond, he stepped into the open. House Revel, he called, his voice carrying across the empty street with ringing authority. I am Kael Eryndor, Lord of the Northern House. You are trespassing in my territory with stolen property. Surrender it now, and I will allow you to leave with your lives. The guards at the door turned. One was a woman with white blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. The other was a man, broad-shouldered and grinning. Lord Eryndor, the woman said mockingly. We were wondering when you'd notice. Took you longer than expected. Getting slow in your old age? Isina. Kael's tone was conversational, almost bored. Still serving House Revel, I see. Tell me, do they pay you well for betraying your oaths? Or do you simply enjoy the taste of dishonor? The woman's smile vanished. Careful, Kael. You're outnumbered. Am I? He tilted his head. I count 4 of you. 1 of me. Those seem like fair odds. The male guard laughed. Arrogant bastard. You always. He never finished the sentence. Kael moved. One moment he stood 20 feet away. The next, he was at the man's throat, moving so fast Elara's eyes couldn't track the motion. The guard tried to fight back, but Kael was already spinning away, his hand flashing out to catch the woman called Isina by the wrist as she lunged. He twisted, and Elara heard bone crack. Isina screamed a sound more animal than human and wrenched herself free. blood dripping from her broken arm. The male guard staggered back, clutching his throat where Kael's fingers had left deep gouges. 2 more vampires dropped from the roof, landing in defensive crouches, and Elara finally understood what Marguerite had meant. Kael wasn't just old. He was a predator so far beyond these younger vampires that the fight wasn't even close. He moved, like water, like wind, like something that had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. His face remained calm, almost disinterested, even as he dodged a blade and caught another vampire by the shoulder, driving him into the warehouse wall hard enough to crack the brick. Inside, he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Now, the loading door burst open, and 2 figures emerged, carrying a struggling form between them, a girl with dark hair and a dress torn at the shoulder. Celine. Elara's heart stopped. Celine. Her sister's head jerked up, her eyes wide with terror. Elara? No, you can't be here. Though one of the vampires holding Celine pressed a blade to her throat. Stop, he ordered Kael. One more step and the girl dies. Kael went still. For the first time since the fight began, Elara saw something like emotion cross his face, not fear, but calculation. Measuring, deciding. Let her go, Kael said softly. She's not what you want. No, the vampire agreed. But she's what you want, or what your little human pet wants anyway. His eyes found Elara in the shadows. Come out, girl. Let's see what you're worth. Don't, Kael said, his voice sharp as a blade. Elara, stay where you are. But Elara was already moving. She couldn't watch her sister die, couldn't let Celine pay the price for her desperate bargain. She stepped into the torchlight, her hands raised. Let her go. Take me instead. The vampire smiled. How noble, how human. He gestured, and another guard grabbed Elara roughly, pulling her toward the wagon. Lord Ravel will be pleased. 2 gifts instead of 1. Kael's expression went cold as winter death. You've made a mistake, have I? The vampire tightened his grip on Celine. You're bound by Night Council law, Eryndor. You cannot kill vampires holding human hostages without council approval. We both know it. True, Kael said, but council law also states that vampires who take humans by force forfeit all protection. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Elara had ever seen. You should have read the fine print. He moved again, impossibly fast, but this time, Elara saw something else, something that made her blood run cold. As Kael struck, his eyes began to glow, not reflect the light, actually glow, silver fire burning in their depths. His fingernails lengthened into claws, and when he caught the vampire holding Celine, she heard a sound like metal tearing through flesh. The vampire screamed and released Celine, who stumbled forward. Kael caught her with one arm, while his other hand closed around the vampire's throat. Run, he told Celine, his voice distorted, inhuman. Both of you. Now. Elara grabbed her sister and pulled her toward the shadows, but she couldn't stop watching. Couldn't look away as Kael civilized, controlled Lord Kael became something else entirely. The other vampires attacked as one, and he met them with brutal efficiency, moving through them like death itself. And then Elara smelled it, blood, sweet and metallic and wrong, filling the air as Kael tore through House Ravel's guards with claws and speed and 200 years of accumulated fury. This wasn't a fight. This was a massacre, and the vampire king at the center of it was beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. Celine sobbed against Elara's shoulder. What is he? Elara held her sister tighter, her own heart hammering. Our only chance. When the last vampire fell, Kael stood in the center of the carnage, his chest heaving despite not needing to breathe. Blood stained his shirt and hands not his own. His eyes still glowed with that eerie silver fire, and for a long moment, Elara thought he might not remember who they were. Then he blinked, and the glow faded. He looked at the bodies around him, then at his bloodied hands. Something like regret crossed his face, so brief Elara almost missed it. Is she hurt? He asked quietly. Elara checked Celine quickly. Bruised, frightened, but alive. Good. He turned toward the warehouse. Wait here. I need to retrieve what they stole. He disappeared inside, leaving Elara and Celine alone with 4 corpses and the lingering scent of violence. Celine gripped Elara's arm. Who is he? What have you done? Elara watched the dark doorway where Kael had vanished, remembering the cold precision of his killing, the inhuman beauty of his rage. I made a deal with a monster, she whispered, to save you, and she still wasn't sure if that made her brave or foolish. Chapter 4. The weight of centuries. Dawn was breaking over House Eryndor when they returned. Celine had fallen asleep against Elara's shoulder during the ride back, exhausted by terror and relief. Elara held her sister close, grateful for the warmth of her, the proof that she was real and safe. But her eyes kept drifting to Kael, who rode ahead in silence. His blood-stained shirt hidden beneath a cloak Dorian had provided. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the warehouse. Marguerite met them at the gates, her expression tight with worry that eased only slightly when she saw them alive. "My lord, the relic?" Kael dismounted and handed her a small wooden box, its surface carved with symbols that seemed to writhe in the pre-dawn light. "Intact. Lock it in the vault. Triple the wards. And the girl? She stays." Kael's voice was flat, exhausted in a way that seemed wrong for a creature who didn't need sleep. "Give her the room next to her sisters. Feed them both. Let them rest." He walked toward the manor without another word, his steps heavy. Marguerite watched him go, something like concern flickering across her ancient face. Then she turned to Elara. "Bring your sister. I'll show you to your rooms." Celine slept for 14 hours. Elara sat beside her sister's bed, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, hardly daring to believe she was truly safe. Every few minutes, she checked Celine's pulse, her temperature, the bruises on her wrists where the vampires had held her. Minor injuries, superficial, she would heal. But the terror in Celine's eyes when she'd finally told Elara what had happened that would take longer to fade. They came to the market. Celine had whispered before exhaustion claimed her. "Told me they needed help finding an address. I was stupid enough to follow them into an alley. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in that warehouse. They kept asking me questions about you, about our family, why we were in debt, who we owed money to. I didn't understand why they cared." Elara understood now. House Revel hadn't taken Celine randomly. They'd been watching the Thorne family, looking for leverage, waiting for someone desperate enough to approach House Eryndor. They'd been bait for a trap meant to lure Kael, and Elara had walked right into it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Marguerite entered carrying a tray of food, bread, cheese, fruit, and tea that smelled of bergamot and honey. "You need to eat," the seneschal said gently. "Your sister is safe. You've barely slept yourself." "I can't," Elara's voice cracked. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. What he did, what he is." Marguerite set the tray down and studied Elara with those ancient amber eyes. "You're afraid of Lord Kael now. Shouldn't I be?" "Perhaps." Marguerite sat in the chair across from Elara, her movements graceful despite her obvious age. "He is dangerous. He is capable of great violence. But he is also capable of great restraint. Do you know how many vampires would have torn through those guards without hesitation? How many would have killed your sister simply because she was inconvenient? He said he would choose the relic over her life, and yet he saved her anyway." Marguerite's expression softened. "Lord Kael has ruled for 2 centuries by being honest about his nature. He does not pretend to be good, but he is not needlessly cruel, and he honors his word. He told you he would help find your sister. He did. At what cost?" Elara whispered. 4 vampires are dead because of me. 4 vampires are dead because they broke Night Council law and kidnapped a human child." Marguerite's voice hardened. "Do not carry guilt for their choices. They knew the risk when they served House Revel." Elara looked at her sister's sleeping face. "What happens now?" "Celine is safe, but Kael said I owe him a debt." "What does he want from me?" "I don't know." Marguerite stood. "But whatever it is, he will not demand it while you are both recovering. Rest, Miss Thorne. You have time." After Marguerite left, Elara forced herself to eat, then finally allowed exhaustion to pull her into fitful sleep in the chair beside Celine's bed. She dreamed of silver eyes and blood-stained hands reaching for her throat. She woke to twilight filtering through the curtains. Celine still slept, her breathing deep and even. Elara rose carefully, her body stiff from sleeping in the chair, and stepped into the hallway. The manor was quiet, lit by candles and iron sconces that cast dancing shadows on the walls. She didn't mean to wander, but her feet carried her through corridors she didn't recognize, past rooms filled with covered furniture and portraits of dead lords, until she found herself in a part of the house that felt different, older. The air here tasted of dust and memory. A door stood ajar at the end of the hall, golden light spilling from within. Elara knew she should turn back, knew she was trespassing. But curiosity and something else, something she didn't want to name, pulled her forward. She pushed the door open. It was a library. Not the formal collection she'd seen near the war room, but something personal, intimate. Books lined every wall from floor to ceiling, their spines worn from reading. A fire burned in the hearth, and before it sat Kael in a high-backed chair, a book open in his lap. He looked up as she entered, and she saw that his eyes were red-rimmed. Not from tears, she didn't think vampires could cry, but from something like exhaustion that went deeper than physical weariness. "I'm sorry," Elara said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude." "Yet you did." His voice held no anger, only a tired curiosity. "Can't sleep?" "I slept. She hesitated. "I needed to walk. And you walked here." He closed the book. "Sit, if you like, or leave." "I'm too tired to care which." The honesty of it surprised her. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her, and sat in the chair across from him. The fire crackled between them, warm and ordinary. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No, but you're covered in blood." "Not mine." He looked down at his hands, which he'd washed, but not thoroughly. Dried blood still stained the creases of his palms. "I should have cleaned up properly before returning, but I wanted to secure the relic first. Make sure you and your sister were safe. By the time I thought about appearances, I was too tired to care." "Vampires get tired?" "Not the way you do, but we can exhaust ourselves, especially when we—" He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "When we lose control." Elara remembered the glow in his eyes, the claws, the savage efficiency of his killing. "Is that what happened? You lost control?" "Partially." He set the book aside. "Vampires have different states of being. Most of the time, we maintain a veneer of humanity. We walk, we talk, we mimic the living. But when we're threatened or hungry or enraged, the veneer cracks. We become what we truly are." His silver eyes met hers. "You saw what I truly am tonight, a predator." "Yes, but you stopped. You didn't hurt me or Celine." "I am 265 years old, Elara. I have had centuries to master myself. But mastery is not the same as transformation. I can control the beast. I cannot kill it." Silence settled between them. Elara studied his face, the perfect features, the exhaustion beneath them, the weight of centuries in his eyes. "Why did you save her?" she asked quietly. "You said you'd choose the relic, but you saved Celine first." Kael looked into the fire. For a long moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft as winter snow. "I had a sister once," he said. "Her name was Lissa. She was 16 when I was turned. I tried to protect her from what I'd become. But house politics are vicious. A rival vampire lord took her to use as leverage against me." He paused. "I was young then, newly turned. I didn't know how to fight as I do now. By the time I learned where they were keeping her, she was already dead." Elara's chest tightened. "Kael, that was 230 years ago." His hands clenched on the arms of his chair. "I should be over it. I've lost hundreds of people since then. Humans I cared for, vampires I called friends. Time should have dulled the grief, but it hasn't. It never does." He finally looked at her. "So when I saw your sister with a blade at her throat, I didn't think about strategy or council law or my relic. I thought about Lissa, and I chose differently than I did centuries ago." Tears burned Elara's eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me." His voice turned rough. "I'm not a hero, Elara. I'm a monster who occasionally makes choices that align with human morality. Don't mistake tonight for redemption." "I'm not." She leaned forward. "But I'm not going to pretend you're just a monster either. Monsters don't grieve their sisters for 200 years. He stared at her, something vulnerable and raw flickering across his face before he locked it away again. "You're dead," he said quietly. "I've decided what I want." Elara's heart stuttered. "What?" "Stay here, at House Eryndor. Not as a prisoner or a servant, but as," he searched for the word, "an advisor. Someone who sees the world through human eyes. Someone who can tell me when I'm forgetting what it means to care about mortal things." "Why would you need that?" "Because House Revel's attack wasn't random. They're preparing for war, and when it comes, humans will be caught in the crossfire. I need someone who can help me protect them." His silver eyes held hers. "I need someone who isn't afraid to tell a vampire king when he's wrong." Elara's breath caught. "That's the debt? Just stay?" "Just stay." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Though I suspect you'll find it more complicated than it sounds." Outside, full night had fallen, and in the firelight, Elara made her second bargain with the Vampire King. "I'll stay," she said, "for as long as you need me. The smile that crossed Kael's face was small and sad and almost human. Then welcome to House Eryndor, Elara Thorne. May you survive what's coming. Chapter 5. The Gathering Storm. 3 nights passed in uneasy peace. Elara spent her days learning the rhythms of House Eryndor. She woke at dusk when the vampires stirred, took meals with Selene in their shared sitting room, and attended evening meetings in the war room, where Kael plotted strategy with Dorian and Marguerite. She learned the names of the other houses: Revel, Blackmore, Siltaire, Morven, and the intricate web of alliances and blood oaths that bound them. She learned that vampire politics were less about armies and more about influence, secrets, and very long memories. She also learned that Kael had been right about one thing: staying was more complicated than it sounded. Selene wanted to leave, wanted to return to their mother, to their old life, to pretend the past week had been a nightmare they could wake from. But their apartment had been ransacked while they were gone. House Revel searching for leverage, Kael suspected, and their mother had been moved to a safer location under House Eryndor's protection. Going back wasn't an option. Not yet. I hate this, Selene said on the third night, staring out the window at the moonlit gardens. I hate feeling trapped. I hate that we owe him. I know. Elara sat beside her sister, taking her hand. But Kael kept his word. You're safe. Mother is safe. And House Revel can't touch us here. For how long? Selene's voice cracked. You heard Dorian. House Revel is calling a council meeting. They're accusing Kael of murdering their vampires without trial. What happens if the council sides with them? Elara had no answer. She'd asked Kael the same question earlier, and his response had been coldly pragmatic. Then House Eryndor prepares for war. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Marguerite entered without waiting for permission, her face grim. Miss Thorne, Lord Kael requests your presence in the war room. Immediately, Elara's stomach dropped. What's happened? House Revel has made their move. The war room was chaos. Maps had been pushed aside, replaced by scattered papers and a single blood-red envelope sealed with black wax. Kael stood at the head of the table, his jaw tight, while Dorian paced like a caged wolf. 2 other vampires Elara didn't recognize stood near the door guards. Judging by their posture, Kael looked up as she entered. Close the door. Elara obeyed, her heart racing. What's going on? House Revel has issued a formal challenge. Kael gestured to the envelope. They're calling for a night court tribunal in 5 days. They claim I violated council law by killing their vampires without due process. If I cannot prove my actions were justified, I forfeit my seat as Lord of House Eryndor. But they kidnapped Selene. They stole your relic. They deny both accusations. Dorian's voice was sharp with frustration. They claim their vampires were acting independently, without house sanction. They've already disavowed them publicly. As far as the council is concerned, Kael killed 4 rogues who happened to serve House Revel. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie. Kael's eyes flashed silver. But it's a convenient one, and without proof that House Revel ordered the kidnapping. The council will have no choice but to rule against me. Elara's mind raced. What about Selene's testimony? She can tell them what happened. Human testimony carries no weight in night court, Marguerite said quietly. Only vampire witnesses or physical evidence can be presented. Then we find evidence. Elara moved to the table. The warehouse. There must be something there: documents, correspondence, proof of House Revel's involvement. We searched it thoroughly. Dorian shook his head. They cleared it out before dawn. Burned everything. Not everything. One of the guards spoke up, a young vampire with dark skin and worried eyes. My lord, there's a rumor. One of House Revel's servants might talk. A human named Marcus who worked in their estate. Word is he's gone into hiding. But he knows things. Things about the kidnappings. Kael's attention sharpened. Where is he? The old quarter, near the docks. But he won't speak to vampires. Too afraid House Revel will find out and kill him. Then I'll go. Elara's voice cut through the room. I'm human. He'll trust me. Absolutely not. Kael's tone allowed no argument. House Revel knows you're under my protection. If they find you outside these walls, they'll take you, or kill you. Either way, I lose the only human advisor who isn't terrified of me. Then what do you suggest? We have 5 days to find proof, and the only witness won't talk to vampires. I'm your best option. You're a civilian with no combat training who nearly died 3 nights ago, and you're a vampire king who can't afford to lose his house. Elara met his gaze steadily. You asked me to stay because I see the world through human eyes. Well, right now, the world needs a human to solve this problem. Let me help. Silence filled the room. Kael stared at her, jaw working, clearly torn between practicality and whatever protective instinct had made him save Celine. She won't go alone, Dorian said finally. I'll accompany her, at a distance, close enough to intervene if things go wrong, far enough that this Marcus won't be spooked. I'll go too, Marguerite added. A woman traveling with guards is less suspicious than a woman traveling with a male vampire. Kael looked at each of them in turn, then back at Elara. If you do this, you follow their instructions exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. You find Marcus, get his testimony and return immediately. Understood? Understood. Good. He turned to Dorian. Take 2 more guards. Keep her in sight at all times. If House Revel shows up, we extract her. I know the protocol. Kael nodded slowly, then pulled a small silver pendant from his pocket. He crossed to Elara and pressed it into her palm. The metal was cold and etched with the same thorns and roses pattern that decorated her door. House Eryndor's mark, he said quietly. Keep it hidden. But if you're in danger, show it. Any vampire who sees this will know you're under my direct protection. Harming you means declaring war on my entire house. Elara closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling its weight. Thank you. His hand lingered over hers for a moment, cold skin against warm, before he stepped back. Don't thank me yet. If this Marcus has evidence, House Revel will do anything to silence him. You're walking into a trap. Then I'll be careful. Careful won't be enough. His silver eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Come back alive, Elara. That's an order. It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a plea. An hour later, Elara found herself in the old quarter, dressed in simple clothes that wouldn't attract attention, the pendant hidden beneath her collar. Marguerite walked beside her, glamored to appear human, her pale skin warmed to a healthy flush, her amber eyes temporarily brown. Dorian followed. Somewhere in the shadows, invisible but present, the docks at night were a different world. Taverns spilled light and laughter onto narrow streets. Sailors stumbled between establishments, already drunk. Merchants hawked questionable goods from carts. And everywhere, Elara felt eyes watching. Marcus worked as a scribe, Marguerite murmured. He has a room above the print shop on Copper Street. 3rd floor, eastern window. We'll approach as customers looking for copying services. They found the shop easily a narrow building wedged between a tavern and a boarding house, its windows dark. Marguerite knocked on the side door in a specific pattern. 3 quick, 2 slow, 1 quick. Nothing happened. She knocked again. This time, footsteps sounded from within. The door cracked open, revealing a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles and ink-stained fingers. His eyes darted between them nervously. We're closed. We're looking for Marcus, Elara said gently. We need to talk about House Revel. His face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. Elara stepped closer, keeping her voice low. People are in danger. You worked for House Revel. You know what they're capable of. We need your help to stop them. I can't. His voice shook. If they find out I talked, they'll kill me. They've already killed 2 other servants who knew too much. Then help us make sure they can't kill anyone else. Elara pulled out the pendant, letting it catch the lamplight. I'm under Lord Eryndor's protection. Whatever you tell us, he'll keep you safe. I promise. Marcus stared at the pendant, recognition and terror warring on his face. You're her. The seamstress. The one whose sister they took. Yes. And they would have killed her if Lord Eryndor hadn't intervened. Please, Marcus, tell us what you know. He looked up and down the street, then pulled the door open wider. Come inside. Quickly. They climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs to a cramped room filled with papers, ledgers, and the smell of old ink. Marcus locked the door behind them and drew the curtains before lighting a single candle. I kept copies, he said quietly, pulling a leather folder from beneath his mattress. Letters, orders, proof that House Revel's lord personally authorized the kidnappings. There are dozens of them, human children, young adults, anyone who might give them leverage over their enemies. He handed the folder to Elara with shaking hands. I didn't know what they were planning until it was too late. By then, I was too afraid to speak up. Elara opened the folder and saw page after page of correspondence and elegant script, each one signed with House Revel's seal. This is exactly what we need, Marguerite breathed. A crash sounded from downstairs, then screaming. Marcus's face went gray. They're here. They followed you. Oh God, there the door exploded inward, and 3 vampires stepped into the room. Their eyes glowing red in the candlelight. The leader, a woman with raven hair and a cruel smile, looked directly at Elara. "Hello, little seamstress," she purred. "Lord Ravel sends his regards." Chapter 6. Blood and Oaths. Elara's hand closed around the pendant at her throat. "I'm under House Eryndor's protection," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Harm me, and you declare war on Lord Kael." The raven-haired vampire laughed. Lord Kael, such a formal title for a dying house. She stepped closer, her movements liquid and predatory. "Did he tell you why House Ravel wants him destroyed? Did he explain what he really is?" "Stay back." Marguerite moved between them, her glamour falling away to reveal her true vampiric nature. "I am Marguerite of House Eryndor, seneschal and blood sworn to Lord Kael. This human is under direct protection. Touch her and face the consequences." "Marguerite?" The vampire's smile widened. "Still serving that monster after all these years? Tell me, does he still wake screaming from the blood dreams? Or has he finally accepted what he did?" "Enough." Marguerite's voice turned dangerous. "Leave now, Serafini, or I'll forget we were once friends." "We were never friends. We simply survived the same master." Serafini's red eyes fixed on the folder in Elara's hands. "Give us the documents, and we'll let you live. All of you." Even the frightened little scribe, Marcus, whimpered. Behind them, Elara clutched the folder tighter. "No, foolish." Serafini gestured, and the two vampires with her moved to flank the room. "You're outnumbered. Marguerite is old, but not old enough to fight three of us alone. Your shadow guard Dorian, isn't it? He's already engaged with our reinforcements downstairs. No one is coming to save you." Glass shattered. Dorian burst through the window in an explosion of moonlight and fury, tackling one of Serafini's vampires before they could react. They crashed into the far wall, and Elara heard bone crack. "You were saying?" Dorian's voice was dark with satisfaction. Serafini snarled. "Kill them. All of them." The room erupted into violence. Marguerite met the second vampire head-on, moving with a grace that belied her age. Dorian fought like a wild thing, all teeth and claws and brutal efficiency. But Serafini moved like death itself, faster and more controlled than either of them. She came straight for Elara. Elara stumbled backward, clutching the documents, her heart hammering. Marcus screamed and dove behind the bed. Serafini's hand shot out, her fingers closing around Elara's throat. "Stupid girl," she hissed. "Did you really think a pendant would protect you?" Elara couldn't breathe. Black spots danced across her vision. She clawed at Serafini's hand, but it was like fighting stone. The vampire's grip tightened, and Elara felt her consciousness beginning to slip. Then Serafini froze. Her eyes went wide. Her hand spasmed open, releasing Elara, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. "No," Serafini whispered. "That's not possible." "He's not." The door exploded off its hinges. Kael stood in the doorway, and the air itself seemed to darken around him. His eyes burned with that terrible silver fire, and the temperature in the room dropped until Elara could see her breath, misting. He wasn't just angry. He was something beyond anger, something ancient and vast and utterly merciless. "You touched what is mine," he said, his voice echoing with inhuman resonance. "You broke the oldest law. You violated sanctuary." Serafini backed away, her confidence crumbling. "My lord, I didn't." "You did." Kael moved into the room, and with each step, the shadows deepened. "You came to my territory. You hunted my people. You put your hands on a human wearing my mark." His eyes found Elara on the floor, still gasping, and something flickered in their depths: relief, fury, fear. "Are you hurt?" Elara shook her head, unable to speak. "Good." He looked back at Serafini. "Then I won't make this quick. Wait." Serafini raised her hands. "Please, Lord Eryndor." "I was following orders." Lord Ravel commanded. "I don't care." Kael's voice was colder than winter death. "You know the law. A human bearing a house mark is sacrosanct. Attacking them is the same as attacking the Lord directly. The punishment is absolute." "Mercy," Serafini begged. "I'll testify against Ravel. I'll tell the council everything. Just don't." "I gave mercy once." Kael's expression went distant, haunted. 80 years ago, a vampire named Lucien broke sanctuary, killed a human under my protection. I showed mercy. I exiled him instead of executing him. Do you know what he did with that mercy?" Serafini's face paled further. "He joined House Ravel," Kael continued softly. "And last month, he killed 3 more humans in my territory. Because I was weak. Because I let sentiment override law." His eyes were focused on Serafini with terrible clarity. "I will not make that mistake again." He moved, Elara turned away, but she couldn't block out the sound. The brief struggle, the wet, tearing noise, the silence that followed. When she looked back, Serafini was gone. Only Ash remained. The other two vampires had stopped fighting, their faces slack with terror. Kael turned to them, and they dropped to their knees immediately. "We surrender," one gasped. "We claim council protection. By the old laws, by the old laws. You have two choices," Kael said flatly. "Swear fealty to House Eryndor and testify against Ravel at the tribunal. Or die like your sister." "We swear," they said in unison. "We swear on blood and bone and eternity. We are yours, Lord Eryndor." Kael studied them with cold calculation, then nodded. "Dorian, take them to the holding cells. Marguerite, escort Miss Thorne and Marcus back to the estate. I'll follow once I've secured the area." "My lord," Marguerite began. "You should now, Marguerite." The seneschal bowed and helped Elara to her feet. Marcus emerged from behind the bed, clutching the documents, his face white as bone. They filed out past Kael, who stood perfectly still in the center of the room, surrounded by ash and moonlight. Elara paused at the door. "Thank you." Kael didn't look at her. "Don't thank me for doing what the law requires. I'm not thanking you for following the law." She clutched the pendant at her throat. "I'm thanking you for coming." His jaw tightened. "Go, Elara. Before I say something I'll regret." She went. Back at House Eryndor, Elara sat in the library while a healer checked her throat. The bruises were already forming dark purple marks in the shape of fingers. The healer, a vampire woman with gentle hands, applied a salve that smelled of herbs and something metallic. "You're lucky," she murmured. "Another few seconds and your windpipe would have collapsed." Lord Kael arrived just in time. Elara nodded silently. Celine burst into the room, her face tear-streaked. "Oh God, Elara, Marguerite told me what happened." "I'm fine." Elara pulled her sister into a fierce hug. "I'm alive. We got the evidence. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Her hands were shaking, and she couldn't stop seeing Serafini's face before Kael turned her to Ash. Couldn't stop hearing the way he'd said, "You touched what is mine with such absolute, terrifying possession." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Kael appeared in the doorway, still dressed in blood-splattered clothes. His eyes no longer glowing, but tired beyond measure. "Leave us," he said quietly. The healer and Celine exchanged glances, then obeyed. The door closed, leaving Elara alone with the Vampire King. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You disobeyed me," Kael said finally. "I told you to be careful. I told you to extract at the first sign of danger. There wasn't time. They came too fast. There's always time." He crossed to her, his movements tight with controlled fury. "You could have died tonight. Do you understand that? Serafini would have snapped your neck the moment I arrived if I'd been even 30 seconds slower. But you weren't. That's not the point." His voice cracked with something raw. "I have lived for 265 years. I have lost hundreds of people. Humans, vampires, mortals. I cared about more than I should have. I've watched them age and die and turn to dust. And each time I tell myself it doesn't matter. That attachment is weakness. That caring is foolish." He stopped in front of her, his silver eyes burning. "And then you walk into my life stubborn and brave and so achingly mortal, and suddenly I'm terrified again. Terrified in a way I haven't been since Lissa died." Elara's breath caught. "Kael, I can't lose you." The words came out barely above a whisper. "I know I should. I know you're human and temporary, and I'll outlive you by centuries. But right now, in this moment, I can't imagine this house without you in it." He reached out, his cold fingers hovering near her bruised throat, but not quite touching. "So please, please be more careful. Because I am not strong enough to survive losing someone else." He stopped, jaw working. "Someone else I've sworn to protect." The air between them felt charged, electric. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. "I'll be more careful," she whispered. "I promise." He nodded slowly, then stepped back, that careful mask of control sliding back into place. "Good. The tribunal is in for days. With Marcus's testimony and the documents you recovered, we have enough to prove House Ravel's guilt." His mouth curved into something cold and satisfied. "They wanted to destroy me. Instead, they've destroyed themselves. What happens to them? The council will strip them of their seat. Their assets will be distributed among the other houses. And Lord Ravel himself," Kael's smile turned sharp, "he'll be executed for violating sanctuary law." Slowly, Elara should have been horrified. Instead, thinking of Celine's terror, of Marcus's fear, of all the other humans House Revel had hurt. She felt only a grim satisfaction. Good, she said. Kael studied her face, and something like approval flickered in his eyes. You're learning. Learning what? How to survive in my world. He moved toward the door, then paused. Rest tonight, Elara. The tribunal will be brutal, and I need you strong. He glanced back, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. And I need you alive. Then he was gone, leaving Elara alone with her racing heart and the phantom touch of his concern lingering on her skin. Chapter 7. The Night of Ash. Attack came 2 nights before the tribunal. Elara woke to the sound of breaking glass and screaming. For a moment, she lay frozen in the darkness of her room, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Then smoke began seeping under her door, acrid and thick, and panic seized her. She threw back the covers and ran to the door, pressing her hand against the wood. Hot. The hallway beyond was burning. Celine. She ran to the connecting door between their rooms and burst through. Her sister was already awake, coughing, her eyes wide with terror. We have to go, now. The door is on fire. The window. Elara ran to the window and threw it open. 3 stories down, the garden spread in moonlit darkness. Too far to jump, but a trellis ran along the wall, covered in climbing roses. Can you climb? Celine nodded, her face pale. Then go. I'm right behind you. Her sister swung out onto the trellis, moving with the agility of youth and fear. Elara followed, her hands finding purchase on the wooden slats. Thorns bit into her palms, but she didn't stop. Behind them, flames licked out of the broken window, painting the night orange. They were halfway down when the trellis shuddered. Keep going. Elara shouted. The wood cracked. Celine dropped the last 6 feet, landing hard but upright. Elara followed a heartbeat later, her ankle twisting as she hit the ground. Pain shot up her leg, but she forced herself to stand. Around them, House Eryndor was under siege. Vampires fought in the courtyard, Dorian and Marguerite leading House Eryndor's guards against a force of intruders dressed in black and crimson. House Revel's colors. Fire burned in multiple wings of the manor, and the air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of vampire blood. This way. Marguerite appeared beside them, her face smudged with soot, a blade in her hand dripping silver liquid. The escape tunnels. We need to get you. A vampire dropped from the roof between them, separating Elara and Celine from Marguerite. He was young, his eyes wild with bloodlust and battle frenzy. Humans, he snarled. Lord Revel wants you alive. But he didn't say unharmed. Elara pushed Celine behind her, searching desperately for a weapon. Her hand closed on a broken fence post. The wood splintered to a point. Not silver, but better than nothing. The vampire lunged. Elara swung, driving the makeshift stake toward his chest. He was faster, catching her wrist and twisting until she cried out and dropped the wood. His other hand closed around her throat the second time in 3 days, and she felt her vision begin to darken. Then the vampire jerked backward, his eyes going wide. Kael stood behind him, one hand buried in the vampire's chest. Silver fire burned in Kael's eyes, and his face was a mask of cold fury. He pulled his hand free, and the vampire collapsed, convulsing. Take them to the catacombs, Kael commanded Marguerite. Seal the entrance. Don't open it until I give the all clear. My lord, you can't face them all alone. I'm not alone. Dorian and the others are holding the east wing. I'll secure the west. His eyes found Elara, and for a moment, the mask cracked. Go, please. Marguerite grabbed both Elara and Celine, pulling them toward a statue of a thorned rose in the center of the garden. She pressed something on the base, and the statue swung aside, revealing stone steps leading down into darkness. Move. Marguerite pushed them forward. Elara looked back once and saw Kael standing alone in the burning garden, surrounded by enemies, his silver eyes blazing like stars. Then Marguerite pulled her into the tunnels, and the entrance sealed behind them with a grinding of stone. The catacombs beneath House Eryndor were older than the manor itself. Marguerite led them through narrow passages carved from living rock, lit by phosphorescent moss that glowed sickly green. The air was cold and damp, tasting of earth and age. Celine clung to Elara's hand, trembling, while Marguerite moved ahead with a vampire's perfect night vision. How did they get past the wards? Elara asked, her voice echoing in the confined space. Someone disabled them from the inside. Marguerite's voice was tight with fury. A traitor. We'll find them when this is over. How many attackers? 20, maybe 30. House Revel emptied their vaults for this assault. They know the tribunal is in days. This is their last chance to destroy the evidence and kill the witnesses before the council convenes. Marcus, Elara gasped. Where is he? Safe. Lord Kael moved him to a secure location yesterday. He suspected something like this might happen. Marguerite stopped at a junction where 3 tunnels met. This way. The safe room is just ahead. They emerged into a circular chamber carved with ancient symbols. Candles burned in iron sconces, and the walls were lined with shelves holding books, weapons, and supplies. A dozen humans huddled in the center, servants from the manor, their faces frightened. Miss Thorne. One of the servants rushed forward. Thank God. We thought you were trapped upstairs. We almost were. Elara looked at Marguerite. What now? Now we wait. The seneschal moved to a small alcove, where a bronze mirror hung on the wall. She passed her hand over it, and the surface rippled like water, revealing an image of the gardens above. The battle was intensifying. Elara watched in horror as Kael fought with brutal efficiency, cutting through House Revel's vampires like a scythe through wheat. But there were so many of them, and even he was beginning to slow. Blood stained his clothes, some of it his own. She realized with a jolt of fear, he's wounded. She whispered, heal, heal. Marguerite's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the edge of the mirror too tightly. Lord Kael has survived worse. Has he survived 30 vampires at once? Marguerite didn't answer. In the mirror, Dorian appeared, fighting his way toward Kael. The 2 vampires stood back to back, holding off the assault, but House Revel's forces were pressing closer. And then Elara saw something that made her blood run cold. A figure emerged from the burning manor, tall, elegant, dressed in crimson and black. Lord Revel himself. Even through the mirror, she could feel his power, ancient and terrible and wrong. No, Marguerite breathed. He was supposed to be at his northern estate. Intelligence said intelligence was wrong. Elara's hands clenched. He's going to kill them. Lord Kael can handle. Look at him. In the mirror, Kael had gone very still. He was staring at Lord Revel with an expression Elara had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper and darker and infinitely more dangerous. Recognition. Lord Revel smiled and spoke words Elara couldn't hear. But she saw Kael's reaction, saw the way his face went white, the way his hands trembled before he clenched them into fists. What did he say? Elara demanded. Marguerite's voice was hollow. I don't know, but whatever it was, it's personal. The 2 vampire lords circled each other in the burning garden. Dorian tried to interfere, but Lord Revel gestured, and 3 of his vampires dragged Dorian away. This wasn't a battle anymore. This was a duel. Ancient and formal and deadly, they struck simultaneously. The speed was inhuman, impossible to track. They became blurs of motion, silver and crimson fire, moving through the garden like forces of nature. Where they collided, the ground cracked. Where they separated, blood spattered the roses. Kael was faster, but Lord Revel was older, stronger, and he was winning. Elara watched in mounting horror as Kael began to falter. A slash across his ribs, another wound on his shoulder. His movements slowing, becoming defensive rather than offensive. We have to help him, she said. We're human, Marguerite said desperately. We'll only distract him. Get him killed. He's already dying. In the mirror, Lord Revel caught Kael by the throat and slammed him into the garden wall hard enough to crack stone. He leaned close, speaking words that made Kael's face contort with rage and anguish. Then Lord Revel pulled back his hand, claws extended, aiming for Kael's heart. Elara didn't think, didn't plan. She simply moved. She grabbed a silver dagger from the weapons shelf, one of the few things that could truly harm a vampire, and ran for the tunnel exit before Marguerite could stop her. Elara, no. But she was already climbing the stairs, her wounded ankle, screaming with every step. She burst out into the garden through a hidden entrance behind the fountain, the heat from the fires immediately making her skin prickle. Lord Revel's hand was descending toward Kael's chest. Stop. Elara's voice cut through the chaos. Every vampire in the garden froze, turned, stared at the human girl standing alone with a silver dagger. Her hands shaking, but her spine straight. Lord Revel's eyes found her crimson and ancient and amused. Well, how unexpected. Let him go, Elara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Or you'll what? Stab me with that toothpick? Lord Revel laughed. My dear child, you can barely hold it. And even if you could reach me, one human with a silver blade is hardly a threat. maybe not. Elara pressed the blade to her own throat. But one human suicide is. The amusement died in Lord Ravel's eyes. Clever. You understand vampire law after all. I understand enough. Elara's heart hammered, but she kept the blade steady. If I die here, in House Eryndor's territory, while wearing Lord Kael's mark, it becomes a blood debt, one that the Night Council cannot ignore. You lose everything. Silence filled the garden, broken only by crackling flames. Lord Ravel studied her with newfound interest. You would die for him? For a monster who has killed thousands, who will outlive you by centuries and forget your name within a decade? Yes, Elara said simply. I would. Kael made a sound half growl, half plea. Elara, don't, please don't. But she didn't lower the blade, didn't look away from Lord Ravel's crimson gaze. So Lord Ravel said softly, the great Kael Eryndor has found something to care about again. How? Unfortunate for him. He released Kael, who slumped against the wall. Very well, little human. You've bought him a stay of execution. But this isn't over. The tribunal will decide his fate. And when the council rules against him, I will take everything he has, including you. He gestured, and his vampires began to withdraw, melting into the shadows like smoke. Within moments, House Ravel was gone. The blade fell from Elara's nerveless fingers. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees in the ash-strewn garden, the weight of what she'd done finally crushing her. Kael was beside her in an instant, his cold hands gentle as they cupped her face. You idiotic, brave, impossible woman, he rasped. You could have died. You should have stayed hidden. You're welcome, Elara whispered, and then she started laughing or maybe crying. She couldn't tell, and Kael pulled her against his chest, holding her like she was something precious and fragile. While House Eryndor burned around them. Chapter 8. The space between dawn came gray and cold over House Eryndor's ruins. Elara sat in what remained of the library, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, watching smoke still curl from the charred eastern wing. The fire had been contained, but 3 wings of the manor were destroyed. 2 vampires from House Eryndor were dead. 5 more were wounded. The humans had all survived, hidden safely in the catacombs. But their faces carried the hollow look of people who'd come too close to death. She hadn't seen Kael since he'd carried her back inside hours ago. Marguerite entered, carrying a tray of tea and bread. The seneschal looked exhausted, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled, soot still streaking her pale skin. You should eat, Marguerite said gently, setting the tray down. You've been sitting here for hours. I can't. Elara's voice came out flat. Every time I close my eyes, I see that blade at my throat. I feel how close I came to. She stopped, her hands trembling. What was I thinking? You were thinking Lord Kael would die if you did nothing. Marguerite sat beside her. You weren't wrong. Lord Ravel was seconds from ending him, but I held a knife to my own throat. I threatened suicide. What kind of person does that? The kind who saves the people she cares about. Marguerite's amber eyes were kind. You're not the first human to make such a choice for a vampire, Miss Thorne. Though you may be the first to survive the aftermath. Elara looked at her hands still shaking, the cuts from the rose thorns scabbed over. Where is he? His chambers. Healing. Lord Kael's wounds were severe. Silver poison claws leave injuries that take time even for ancient vampires. Marguerite hesitated. He's also struggling with what happened. Struggling how? He blames himself. For the attack. For putting you in danger. For not predicting Lord Ravel's involvement. She paused. And for caring about you more than is wise. Elara's breath caught. He said that? Not in so many words. But I've served Lord Kael for nearly 2 centuries. I know when he's afraid. Marguerite stood. The tribunal is tomorrow night. We have Marcus's testimony and the documents. We should win. But Lord Kael won't be able to focus if he's worried about your safety. You need to talk to him. I don't think he wants to see me. He doesn't. Which is exactly why you need to go. Marguerite moved toward the door. 3rd floor, Western Tower. The one wing that didn't burn. You'll know his chambers by the door carved with thorns. Elara climbed the stairs slowly, her wounded ankle protesting. The Western Tower was eerily quiet, untouched by the fire, but heavy with the weight of recent violence. Tapestries depicting vampire history lined the walls. Battles, blood oaths, coronations of lords long dead. She found the door easily. The carved thorns were so intricate they seemed to writhe in the candlelight. She knocked softly. Go away, Marguerite. It's not Marguerite. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened to reveal Kael, and Elara's chest tightened at the sight of him. He wore only dark trousers, his torso wrapped in bandages stained with silver-threaded blood. Bruises covered his pale skin, injuries that should have healed by now but hadn't, evidence of silver poisoning. His hair was loose, falling past his shoulders, and his silver eyes were haunted. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I know." She met his gaze. "But I needed to see that you're alive." "I'm not alive. I haven't been alive for 265 years, but he stepped aside, letting her enter. His chambers were surprisingly sparse. A large bed with black silk sheets, a wardrobe, a desk covered in papers and maps, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens or what remained of them. The only personal touch was a small portrait on the mantel, a young woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. "Lissa," Elara said softly. "Yes." Kael moved to the windows, keeping distance between them. "She would have liked you." She had the same stubborn streak, the same inability to recognize when something was too dangerous. "I'm sorry. For what?" "Saving my life?" His voice turned bitter. "Don't be. You did what I couldn't. You used vampire law against itself. It was brilliant and insane and completely reckless. You're angry. I'm terrified." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "Do you understand what you almost did? You held a blade to your throat. One slip, one moment of weakness, and you would have died. And it would have been my fault. Another person." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Another person dead because of me." Elara crossed to him, ignoring the voice in her head screaming that this was dangerous, that getting close to a wounded vampire was foolish. She stopped a foot away, close enough to feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. "It wasn't your fault," she said firmly. "House Eryndor attacked. They chose violence. They chose to break sanctuary law. You didn't make them do that. But I made you stay here. I bound you with that debt. If you'd gone home after we rescued Celine, none of this would have happened. If I'd gone home, my sister and I would both be dead or worse by now." Elara reached for his hand, his cold, deadly hand that had killed dozens, and held it gently. "You protected us. You gave us sanctuary when no one else would. Don't you dare apologize for that." He stared at their joined hands like he couldn't quite believe she was touching him willingly. "I don't deserve your loyalty. That's not your decision to make." She squeezed his fingers. "I chose to stay. I chose to help you. And I chose to risk my life last night because the thought of watching you die was more terrifying than dying myself." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you care about a monster?" "Because you're not just a monster." Elara's voice softened. "You're also the man who remembered his sister after 200 years, who built a house on justice instead of cruelty, who was honest about what he was, even when it would have been easier to lie, who held me while I cried in a burning garden." She stepped closer until they were nearly touching. "I see what you are, Kael. All of it. The vampire and the man. The predator and the protector. And I'm not afraid. You should be." But his free hand came up, his fingers hovering near her face without quite touching. "Everyone I've ever cared about has died. My family, my friends, humans I tried to protect and vampires I tried to save. Loving me is a death sentence, Elara. I won't survive losing you too. Then don't lose me." She caught his hand, pressing it against her cheek despite the cold. "Fight for this. Fight for me. Help me survive in your world instead of pushing me away." He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and pulled her against his chest. His arms wrapped around her with desperate strength, and she felt him shaking. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered into her hair. "I don't know how to care about someone who's going to die long before I do. I don't know how to be close to you without wanting things I can't have." "What things?" "Everything." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "Your warmth, your heartbeat, your life." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his silver eyes burning. "Your blood." Elara's pulse jumped. She should be afraid. Any sane person would be afraid. But all she felt was a strange, electric awareness of the dangerous creature holding her so carefully. "I trust you," she said. "You shouldn't, but I do." She reached up, her fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. "Show me what you need. Teach me how vampires care for the people they." She stopped, suddenly unsure of the word. "Love?" Kael finished, his expression raw. "Is that what you were going to say? Was it?" Elara's heart hammered. She barely knew him 2 weeks, that was all. 2 weeks of danger and death and impossible choices. How could she feel this much for someone so quickly? But looking into his ancient, weary eyes, she realized the truth. time didn't matter. Not when every moment felt like it could be their last. Yes, she whispered. Love. He closed his eyes, his forehead resting against hers. You're going to destroy me, or save you. She smiled shakily. We'll find out together. For a long moment, they simply stood there, human and vampire, mortal and immortal. Two broken people finding unexpected solace in each other. Then Kael pulled back, his expression shifting to something more controlled, though the emotion still lurked beneath. The tribunal is tomorrow. If we win, House Eryndor falls, and you're truly safe. If we lose, he trailed off, we won't lose. We have evidence, witnesses, the law on our side. The law is what powerful vampires say it is. His jaw tightened. But I'll fight for this. For you. For the future. You seem to think we can have. He touched her face one more time, his cold fingers gentle. Go rest. Tomorrow changes everything. Elara nodded and moved toward the door. But she paused at the threshold, looking back at the vampire king standing alone in his sparse chambers, surrounded by the ghosts of his long life. Kael? Yes? Thank you. For not pushing me away. A smile ghosted across his lips, small, sad, and achingly real. Thank you for not giving up on me. As Elara walked back down the tower stairs, she realized something had shifted between them. The careful distance Kael had maintained was crumbling. And tomorrow, in the night court, before all the vampire houses, they would either survive together, or fall into darkness holding hands. Chapter 9. The language of Forworthy night before the tribunal. Elara couldn't sleep. She lay in her repaired room. Marguerite had worked miracles, getting the smoke damage cleaned, and the broken window replaced, staring at the ceiling, and trying not to think about what tomorrow would bring. The night court, ancient vampire lords judging Kael's actions, Marcus's testimony, the evidence she'd nearly died retrieving. What if it wasn't enough? A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting Celine or Marguerite. Instead, Kael stood in the doorway, dressed simply in dark clothes, his hair tied back. The silver poisoning had faded, his wounds healed to thin pink lines that would disappear by morning. He looked almost human in the candlelight. Almost. I couldn't sleep either, he said quietly. May I come in? Elara sat up, pulling the covers around herself. It's your house. It's your room. He remained at the threshold, waiting for permission, a gesture that felt significant, loaded with meaning about boundaries and choice. Come in, she said. He entered, closing the door behind him, but leaving it unlocked. Not trapping her, just private. He moved to the window seat, settling there with the easy grace of predators, and looked out at the moonlit gardens. I used to do this with Lissa, he said softly. The night before, something important. She'd get nervous, couldn't sleep, and I'd sit with her and tell her stories until dawn. His smile was gentle with memory. She always pretended the stories helped, but I think she just liked having someone there. Elara left the bed and joined him at the window, curling into the opposite corner of the seat. What kind of stories? Old ones. From before I was turned. Fairy tales about knights and dragons. Legends about heroes who always won. His expression darkened. Lies mostly, but comforting lies. Tell me something true instead, Elara said. Something about your world. The things you haven't explained. Kael studied her face, then nodded slowly. What do you want to know? Everything. She pulled her knees to her chest. You've mentioned blood oaths and house laws and council rules, but I don't really understand how it all works. If I'm going to survive in your world, I need to know the language of forever. He said it with dark irony. Very well. Lesson 1. Vampire society is built on 3 pillars: blood, oath, and time. He shifted to face her more fully, his silver eyes reflective in the moonlight. Blood is power, he continued. The older the vampire, the stronger the blood, the more authority they command. A vampire's age can be determined by how still they can be, how fast they move, how completely they control their nature. Lord Revel is nearly 400 years old. His blood is strong enough that younger vampires feel compelled to obey him instinctively. But you're younger, and you fought him. I'm younger. But I was turned by someone ancient, one of the first vampires, though she's long dead now. Strong blood breeds strong progeny. His expression grew distant. She chose me because I was dying and angry, and willing to do terrible things to survive. She made me a weapon. It took me 50 years to become anything else. Elara's chest tightened. What happened to her? She walked into the sun after 3,000 years of existence. said she was tired. Kael's voice was soft. I understood, even though it broke something in me. Immortality isn't a gift. It's a sentence. Then why do vampires offer it to humans? Because loneliness is worse than weariness. He met her eyes. That's lesson 2. Oaths. Vampires cannot lie when we swear on our blood. It's physically impossible. When we make a blood oath, we bind ourselves completely. That's why the sanctuary law is absolute. Breaking an oath literally burns us from the inside. The pain is indescribable. Is that why you were so angry when Serafini attacked me? Partially. But also because attacking someone under my mark wasn't just breaking law. It was challenging my authority. Saying I'm too weak to protect what's mine. His jaw tightened. Lord Ravel wanted me to retaliate publicly, to look like a tyrant. Instead he shook his head. You turned the law back on him, made my protection of you into a council matter. Brilliant. I was terrified. So was I. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His skin was cold as always, but the touch was gentle. Lesson 3. Time. Humans think in days and years. Vampires think in decades and centuries. We make plans that take lifetimes to unfold. We hold grudges longer than most civilizations exist. And we remember everything. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I remember every person I've killed, every human I've fed from, every oath I've sworn and broken. 265 years of perfect memory, and I can't forget any of it. That sounds like torture. It is. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Which is why most ancient vampires go mad eventually. Or choose the sun. The weight of memory becomes unbearable. Elara squeezed his hand. How do you bear it? Purpose. I built House Eryndor on the principle that vampires could be more than predators. That we could create laws that protected humans instead of preying on them. It's given me something to focus on beyond the endless years. He looked at their joined hands. But lately, I've found another reason. What reason? You. He said it simply, without drama. You walk through my world without fear. You challenge me. You make me remember what it's like to care about someone's opinion, someone's safety, someone's happiness. He lifted his eyes to hers. You make immortality feel less like a sentence and more like possibility. Elara's heart stuttered. Kael, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you're human. I know you'll age and I won't. I know that any future between us is measured in your years, not mine. But right now, in this moment, I need you to know. He stopped, something vulnerable breaking through his careful control. I need you to know that you matter, to me, more than you should. Why shouldn't I matter? Because I'll outlive you by centuries. Because caring about you means knowing I'll watch you grow old and die while I stay frozen in time. Because every moment with you is another moment closer to losing you. His voice roughened. And I'm selfish enough to want those moments anyway. Elara leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and cupped his face with her free hand. His skin was cold against her palm, but his eyes burned with an emotion that was achingly human. Then be selfish, she whispered. Take the moments. I'm offering them. Elara. Her name was a plea, a prayer. If this goes wrong tomorrow, if the council rules against me, and House Ravel comes for us, then we'll face it together. She pressed her forehead to his. But it won't go wrong. We have the truth. We have the law. We have each other. He laughed softly, bitterly. You have entirely too much faith in justice. I have faith in you. Something in his expression cracked open. He pulled her into his arms, holding her with a desperation that spoke of 2 centuries of loneliness finally breaking. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the impossible strength in his frame, the careful control he maintained even now. Teach me more, she said against his shoulder. About your world, your rules, how to survive tomorrow. So he did. For hours, they sat together in the window seat while Kael explained the intricate politics of the night court, the hierarchy of houses, the role of the council as arbiters, the difference between criminal law and blood law, how testimony worked, what evidence could be challenged, the formal language of accusation and defense. He told her about vampires who had ruled justly and those who had fallen into madness, about the thin line between predator and protector, about the constant struggle to maintain humanity when humanity itself was just a memory. And somewhere in the teaching, the distance between them dissolved completely. Elara found herself leaning against him, his arm around her shoulders, his cold presence strangely comforting. He played with her hair absently while he spoke, the gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "You're different than I expected," she said, as dawn began to lighten the sky beyond the window. "Different how?" "More human. More." She searched for the word. "Fragile. Not physically, but emotionally. You feel everything so deeply. Vampires do. We just hide it better." His hand stilled in her hair. "I should go. Dawn is breaking, and I need to prepare for tonight." "Will it hurt?" Elara asked suddenly. "The tribunal. Will they hurt you?" "Not physically. But losing my house, my purpose, watching House Revel take everything I've built." He looked at her. "Yes, that would hurt more than any physical pain." "Then we won't lose." She caught his hand. "We'll walk into that court, present the truth, and watch House Revel fall. Together." He smiled, small, sad, but genuine. Together. As he stood to leave, Elara rose with him. At the door, he paused, looking down at her with an expression so full of longing it stole her breath. "May I?" He trailed off, uncertainty flickering across his ancient face. "Yes," she said. Understanding what he was asking, he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Then his lips brushed her forehead, a kiss so gentle, so reverent, it felt like a vow. "Thank you," he whispered, "for tonight, for not seeing only the monster. Thank you for letting me see the man." He left as dawn fully broke, and Elara stood alone in her room, her hand pressed to where he'd kissed her, feeling like something fundamental had shifted between them. Tonight, they would face the night court, but whatever happened, they would face it as something more than vampire and human. They would face it as two people who had found in each other something worth fighting for, worth surviving for, worth the risk of hope. Chapter 10. The Court of Night court convened in a cathedral of shadows. Elara stood at Kael's side in the great hall of House Eryndor, neutral ground, ancient and untouched by the war between Eryndor and Revel. The chamber was vast, its vaulted ceiling lost in darkness, its walls lined with the symbols of every vampire house that had ever existed. Some were still active. Most were dust and memory. 7 thrones encircled a raised dais in the center of the room. 6 were occupied by the council lords, each representing a major house. The 7th house, Revel's seat, stood empty, waiting. Kael wore formal blacks, his hair bound back with silver cord, his expression a mask of cold control. But Elara could feel the tension in him, coiled tight as a spring. Dorian and Marguerite flanked them, along with Marcus, who clutched his folder of evidence like a lifeline. Celine had remained at House Eryndor under heavy guard. Some battles, Kael had insisted, were not for children to witness. "All rise," a voice echoed through the chamber. "Lord Revel enters the court." Every vampire in the hall stood. Every vampire except Kael. Lord Revel swept into the room in crimson and black, his ancient power rolling before him like a wave. His eyes found Kael immediately, and his smile was cold as winter death. "Lord Eryndor," he said pleasantly, "how kind of you to remain seated in my presence. Such bold disrespect." "I stand for the council," Kael replied evenly. "Not for accused criminals." The temperature in the room dropped. Several vampires hissed, but the council lords remained impassive, watching. Lady Elara, the eldest, her hair white as snow and her eyes black as void, raised one pale hand. "Silence. This court is convened to hear charges of unlawful killing brought by House Revel against House Eryndor. Lord Revel, present your case." Lord Revel ascended to the dais, his movements theatrical. "Honored council, 4 vampires of my house were brutally murdered by Lord Eryndor without trial, without council approval, without mercy. He claims they violated sanctuary law by attacking a human under his mark. But I present evidence that these vampires were acting independently, pursuing a personal vendetta. They were not sanctioned by House Revel. Lord Eryndor had no right to execute them. And your evidence?" Lord Blackmore, a vampire with scarred features and shrewd eyes, leaned forward. "Testimony from 3 witnesses who will swear the vampires in question had been expelled from House Revel days before the attack. They were rogues. Lord Eryndor killed rogues and blamed my house to justify his aggression." Murmurs filled the hall. Elara's hands clenched. "Lies, all lies, Lord Eryndor." Lady Elara turned her ancient gaze on Kael. "Your response?" Kael stood, and the room fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 2 centuries of authority. "I present human testimony and written evidence proving House Revel ordered the kidnapping of humans, including a 16-year-old girl, to use as leverage against House Eryndor. The vampires I killed were acting on Lord Revel's direct orders. They violated sanctuary law by attacking a human wearing my mark. By that law, their execution was not only justified, it was mandatory. Human testimony carries no weight, Lord Revel said smoothly. And documents can be forged. These cannot. Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking but determined. He held up the folder. I was Lord Revel's personal scribe for 3 years. I copied these letters myself. I know his handwriting, his seal, his signature phrases. These are authentic. Lord Revel's expression never changed. This human was dismissed from my service for theft. His testimony is worthless. Then perhaps mine isn't. Every head turned. 2 vampires stepped from the shadows at the back of the hall, the two who had surrendered to Kael during the warehouse fight. They knelt before the council days. We are Serafini's blood sisters, one said. We served House Revel for 60 years. We participated in the attack on the human girl and her sister. We did so on Lord Revel's direct orders. We swear this on our blood and bone. The hall erupted. Lord Revel's mask finally cracked. Traitors. They're lying to save themselves. Blood oaths cannot lie, Lady Siltaire said coldly. You know this, Lord Revel. They're coerced. Eryndor must have, we swear it freely. The second vampire interrupted. Lord Revel ordered us to kidnap the human girl, Elara Thorne, to hold her as bait for her sister, to draw Lord Eryndor into a trap. When the plan failed, he ordered the attack on House Eryndor itself. He broke sanctuary law. He endangered humans under another lord's protection. He violated every principle this council stands for. Silence filled the great hall, heavy as death. Lady Siltaire looked at Lord Revel with eyes that had seen millennia pass. Do you deny these accusations? Lord Revel's composure shattered. They deserved it. Eryndor and his pathetic human sympathies, his laws protecting mortals, his weakness. He's made us into servants of cattle. I was restoring proper order, you have confessed. Lady Siltaire's voice cut like glass. To conspiracy, to violating sanctuary law, to endangering the peace between our houses and the humans we coexist with. She turned to the other council lords. The vote? 6 hands rose as one. House Revel is hereby dissolved, Lady Siltaire pronounced. Its assets distributed among the remaining houses. Lord Revel, you are stripped of your title, your seat, and your protection under council law. Your sentence is execution at dawn. She paused. Lord Eryndor, as the wrong party, the honor of execution falls to you. Elara's breath caught. She looked at Kael, whose face remained perfectly still. No, Kael said quietly. The hall erupted again. Lady Siltaire raised her hand for silence. No, I decline the honor. Kael's silver eyes met Lord Revel's crimson ones. This vampire tried to destroy everything I've built. He endangered humans under my protection. He attacked my house. By every law, I should want him dead. He paused. But I am tired of killing. Tired of blood feuds that last centuries. Tired of vengeance that only breeds more vengeance. He looked at the council. I propose exile instead. Strip him of his power. Ban him from all territories. Let him live the rest of his immortal existence alone, watching the world move on without him. That seems a more fitting punishment than death. Lord Revel's face twisted with rage and humiliation. I'd rather die than accept charity from you, Eryndor. Then you're a fool. Kael's voice was cold. Because I'm not offering charity. I'm offering the one thing worse than death for someone like you, irrelevance. Lady Siltaire studied Kael for a long moment, something like approval in her ancient eyes. The council accepts Lord Eryndor's proposal. Lord Revel, former Lord Revel, you are exiled. You have until dawn to leave our territories. If you return, the execution order stands. Revel was dragged from the hall, screaming threats and curses. But his power was broken. His house was dust. And Kael had won without becoming the monster Revel wanted him to be. As the council lords departed and the hall began to empty, Lady Siltaire paused beside Kael. You showed mercy, she said quietly. That's rare among our kind, especially after such provocation. I had a good teacher. Kael glanced at Elara, and the ghost of a smile touched his lips. Lady Siltaire followed his gaze, her black eyes assessing. The human girl, the one you risked everything for. She tilted her head. Be careful, Lord Eryndor. Caring for mortals is dangerous. It makes us vulnerable. I know, Kael said. But perhaps being vulnerable isn't the weakness I thought it was. The ancient vampire studied him, then nodded slowly. Perhaps not. The night court is adjourned. Outside the hall under the stars, Elara finally allowed herself to breathe. It's over, she whispered. We won, we won. Kael pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. You saved me. Again. I didn't do anything. You made the choice to show mercy, because you taught me I could. He pulled back to look at her face. Elara, there's something I need to ask you. Something important. Her heart stuttered. What? Stay with me. Not as a debtor or an advisor, but as, he searched for the word, as a partner. Someone who helps me remember what it means to be more than a predator. Someone who makes immortality feel less like a curse. His silver eyes burned. I'm offering you a place in my world. A true place. If you want it. Elara's throat tightened. What about when I grow old? When I'm 40 and 50 and dying while you stay young? Then I'll love you at 40. And 50. And whatever age you reach. His voice was fierce. I'll love you with gray in your hair and lines on your face, and all the marks of a life fully lived. And when you're gone, I'll remember you. For centuries, forever, because you gave me something I thought I'd lost hope. Tears burned her eyes. That's not fair. You'll be alone again. I've been alone for 200 years. A few decades with you is worth 1,000 years alone. He cupped her face. But I won't force this choice. If you want to leave, to have a normal human life, I'll protect you and Celine. I'll make sure you're safe and free. I'll let you go. Elara looked at this impossible, ancient, beautiful creature who had somehow become the center of her world. She thought about mortality and immortality, about growing old while he stayed young, about all the pain that lay ahead, and she thought about the way he held her like she was precious, the way he'd chosen mercy because she'd shown him hope, the way her life had been empty before she'd stumbled into his world. I choose you, she said. For however long I have, I choose this life, this world, this impossible future we're building together. His smile was like sunrise, brilliant and warm and full of joy she hadn't known vampires could feel. Then welcome home. Elara Thorne. He kissed her soft at first, then deeper, a promise sealed in moonlight. My impossible, stubborn, beautiful human, your partner, she corrected against his lips. My partner, he agreed. For as long as you'll have me, and under the stars. With House Eryndor safe and House Revel fallen, they began to build something neither vampire nor human had thought possible, a future where love mattered more than immortality, where partnership transcended the boundaries of life and death, where two people from different worlds found their way home to each other. The night court had adjourned, but their story was just beginning. The end epilogue. Note: Elara Thorne lived to be 73 years old. She became the first human council advisor in vampire history, helping draft laws that protected mortals across all territories. She never became a vampire, despite Kael offering her immortality 7 times. I'm perfect as I am, she'd always say. And you love me this way. Kael Eryndor ruled House Eryndor for another 300 years after Elara's death. He never took another partner, but every year, on the anniversary of the night they met, he'd sit in his library with Lys's portrait and a new one he'd commissioned Elara at 70, laughing in the garden, gray-haired and beautiful, and exactly as he remembered her. Thank you, he'd whisper to the painted smile, for teaching me that love doesn't require forever, just the courage to embrace what time we're given. And in the silence of his endless existence, he carried her memory like a light in the darkness, proof that even monsters could learn to love.